guys pay any attention to publishing, authors, and especially indie authors, there's a lot of controversy swirling around right now around Audible. Audible is awesome. I have a book on Audible, my only book. 100% of the books I've ever published on Audible. Let's get into this properly. Hi, my name is Andrew Givler. I am an indie author. I am a booktuber and I'm a YouTuber. Those are my 3 jobs. I like to stay busy. Today, we're gonna talk a little bit about the shots fired at Audible by Brandon Sanderson, which are completely reasonable. And then we're gonna talk a little bit about the issue at hand, such as it is. I've only published 1 book, so I'm coming in with a certain perspective and object thought about this. And I think that I have some ground to talk about because, as I mentioned, my day job is being a YouTuber. Some of you may know, I run a YouTube channel called Sigils, which I've been doing full-time for over 5 years and off and on for the last decade, and amassed over 1 million subscribers. I've also been a Twitch partner, a Facebook partner. I've made videos for Amazon Video. I have worked with or tried to make money with or interacted with on a professional level every major social media platform that exists. So I think that might help me shed some light and some other ways to think about the situation that we're facing today. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, we'll start at the beginning. Brandon Sanderson, who is one of the most prolific writing authors at the moment, the king of fantasy, who just absolutely crushes it with everything he did a Kickstarter a while back. In it, he announced that he had written 5 extra books during the pandemic because he had a bunch of extra free time, and he put them on Kickstarter. This blew the water out of Kickstarter, became the most successful Kickstarter of all time, raised like $44 million or something like that. Somebody can price check me, but that's about the ballpark of what it is. Recently, in his December address on his blog, Brandon announced that he would not be putting the books on Audible. He is self-publishing these books, and he made the decision not to go on Audible. And here's what he said. The books will not be on Audible for the foreseeable future. This is a dangerous move on my part. I don't want to make an enemy of Amazon. I like the people at Audible and had several meetings with them. But Audible has grown to a place where it's very bad for authors. It's a good company doing bad things. Again, this is dangerous to say, and I don't want to make anyone feel guilty. I have an Audible account and a subscription. It's how my dyslexic son, hey, shout out, reads most of the books he reads. I'm also dyslexic. Audible did some great things for books, notably spearheading the audio revolution, which brought audiobooks down to a reasonable price. I like that a lot. And this is where he dives in the other part. And there's a whole bunch more. I'll link to his blog. You can go check it out. But this is the meat and the potatoes. However, they treat authors very poorly, particularly indie authors. The deal Audible demands of them is unconscionable, and I'm hoping that providing market forces and talking about the issue with a megaphone will encourage change in a positive direction. If you want details, the current industry standard for a digital product is to pay the creator 70% on a sale. So what Steam pays your average creator for a game sale, it's what Amazon pays on ebooks, and it's what Apple pays for apps downloaded, and they're getting a lot of heat for that, rightly so. Audible pays 40%, almost half. For frame of reference, most brick and mortar stores take around 50% on a retail product. Audible pays indie authors less than a bookstore does when a bookstore has storefronts, sales staff, and warehousing to deal with. I knew things were bad, which is why I wanted to explore the other options with Kickstarter, but I didn't know how bad. If indie authors don't agree to be exclusive with Audible, they get dropped from 40% to 25%. Buying an audiobook through Audible instead of from another site literally costs the author money. He goes on to say that he really likes the people at Audible, that he's not trying to pick a fight, but that he wants to shine a light that this particular policy is unfair towards indie authors especially. Because if you don't know, a lot of the major publishers have their own deals and their own relationships with Audible. So what I have access to as an indie author is not necessarily the one size fits all deal. Everybody gets a different deal. That's how it works in entertainment across the board. I'm not upset about that in the slightest. That's just how that is. And then he goes on to say, here's the problem. There are no true competitors to Audible. Sure, there are other companies that can buy your book, but they all just list on Audible and take a percentage. He goes on to say that he's gonna be using Spotify and Speechify for his project because they were willing to actually list them and distribute them themselves and make them available in a different way. And he's hoping that in doing so, he's encouraging competition in the market. So here's a couple things you need to know. Like I said, I've only published 1 book. I can give you my experience, but I can also give you the experience that I've learned from talking to other indie authors and learning from them. Most indie authors tell me, especially in like the fantasy and sci-fi genres, that Audible makes up 50% of the sales revenue that they earn. Now, if you don't know, when you sell a Kindle or a print-to-order book on Amazon, you receive 70%. On a print-to-order, there's usually a fee for printing the book. So say, for example, paperback, I think the fee is roughly $5. You then get 70% of what's left over after that $5 or whatever the cost that goes in. Same for hardback, which is more expensive to make, etc. So let's assume you're only selling ebooks, right? To make it really easy. You have to sell so many more audiobooks at that 40% rate to match 50-50, right? Because if I sell my audiobook for $3.99, I'm making $2 and some change. We'll call it $2.20. I know it's not completely correct, but let's just say, okay? Here's the other thing that they don't talk about here in Audible is Audible does not let you control the pricing of your audiobook at all. And the pricing doesn't matter because most people who purchase use their monthly credit, which is cool. I think that system's amazing, but you get paid based on the credit or a purchase. So you have almost no control over what your audiobook is priced at all either. Assuming even that the audiobook sells for twice what you're selling the Kindle for, because you're only keeping 40%, you basically have to sell the same amount, right? It's like 40% versus 70% of something that's almost the same in order for them to break even. In terms of the actual money that goes into what you're buying, Audible should be sinking. Also, audiobooks are expensive to make. They are a cost that is added on top of everything else. So when you book, you have to get your cover art, you got to get it edited, you got to go through a couple different rounds of editing, copy edit, line edit, proofreading, etc. Then when that's done, then you pay somebody to read it, produce it, you have to listen to it, you edit it, you produce it, again, publish it. Extra huge chunk of change. So the concern here is simply that with a digital good, there's not overhead, right? I have no problem with a print to order company charging me the amount that it costs to make the book, or whatever percentage of that, before we split 50-50, right? Cool, deal, that's a great deal. With an audiobook, I pay for the audiobook to be produced. I then give it to them and I say, nobody can have it but you, because otherwise I have to give you a 25% markup or 25% royalty instead of a 40%. And then they keep 75% for doing technically none of the work. Now they are selling it. They are presenting it to the audience. They do have the algorithm that helps readers find it. That is valuable, okay? And this is where I think that my unique experience as being a full-time YouTuber who's trying to become an indie author could maybe shed some light. And hopefully I'm talking about this in a way that makes sense. The concern that's existing right now is essentially that Amazon and Audible have become the juggernauts in this space. And that if you don't work with them, you don't really have a chance of selling books, or you're not going to sell nearly as many books, which is going to hurt how much money you make, which means as they know that, they can give you a bad deal. I also want to give the caveat, just like Brandon, I really like Audible. I don't listen to a ton of audiobooks because the way my ADHD is set up, I can't. Unless I'm like driving or something, but I don't have a commute. I'm really glad it exists because I think it's helping a whole new generation of people really get into storytelling and books and stories, and I'm thrilled. And I'm gonna put my next book on Audible probably. This is not a line in the sand for me. This is talking about, I think, a problem that's maybe a little more nuanced than some people are realizing. But the fear is that you could be strong-armed, right? Essentially, some people feel like that's how they are being. If I don't go with Audible, which is where I'm going to say 70% of people, if not more, get their audiobooks, then I'm not going to sell my audiobooks, because as an indie author, I don't have a following. I'm hoping to get exposed to a following. And that's the key right there. So take, for example, YouTube. Let's throw all this out. YouTube splits the ad revenue 60-40 on YouTube. When you watch YouTube and an ad runs in front of a partnered creator's video, they keep 60% of the revenue of whatever that company paid for the ad to appear on the video. They take it. Or if they're using YouTube Premium, you get paid for that person to not see ads. So YouTube Premium, you guys are great. We love you. 60-40 is still not great, but it is pretty good. When you compare that to Twitch, which has recently gone down to 50-50, but even at its best was only 70-30. TikTok doesn't really give like the value of their numbers. Their actual payouts are quite low because they don't know how to advertise short form yet. Facebook pay similarly to YouTube. I don't know if we know the split on advertisers. I know that it is traditionally better for creators. But the thing that's interesting is that while I could wish that's a better deal, right? If it went to 70-30 in my favor, that would be life-changing. That would be ridiculous. That would open so many more doors for me to hire more people to make better YouTube videos. And in the same way, going from, even at my size with one book, going from 40 to 70% on my audiobook would make it so much easier for me to put more resources behind my future books to keep making great stuff. For clarity's sake, I've sold roughly about 1,300 copies of my book on Audible. Now, just counting what it costs to get the audiobook produced, so not counting editing, cover art, anything else, just the extra fee of what it costs me to have the audiobook made, that is roughly breaking even. A little over, but not enough to do anything with, right? Like, for all intents and purposes, it is broken even, which is awesome. I'm super thankful about that, but that's at that 40% markup. If it was 70%, I would have been almost, double, right? I would have almost doubled what I put into it, which would have been awesome because that would have enabled me to potentially do more things in the future. Helps me pay for more books to be even higher quality and better polished, etc. But going back to that 60-40 on YouTube. YouTube can do that because there is no other video creation platform that competes with them. And on the one hand, competition is great, right? It forces people to take better care of the little people like me instead of the big corporations. It keeps everyone honest, right? Competition is a great thing. And I'm not advocating for monopolies at all. But here's the thing, having a majority stakeholder of an audience works for independent creators too. And let me explain what I mean by that. 10 years ago, or maybe even longer, because I'm not entirely sure on timelines, 20 years ago, let's just say, being an independent author was a touch of death. Like nobody respected it. Nobody thought that you could get your book read because you couldn't. Books are going through a digital revolution right now, akin to what YouTube was for videos. I see it as very, very similar. The Kindle advent has made it cheaper and easier for you to distribute your books. It has opened up a whole new audience, and having them in one place looking for books where you can finally get your book on the shelf, the digital shelf, next to the big dogs, is revolutionary. So by having a single place that people go, that is how we get found, which is incredibly valuable. If there were 5 sites that were all like this and they all had the exact same amount of viewers, that would be harder because you might have your book perform really well on one site and then not on another. Being able to go where the audience is and understand how they are served content allows you to grow. I only have an audience on YouTube because I learned how YouTube worked. Right? I didn't have an audience from somewhere else and brought them in and did whatever. On YouTube, I made videos that the algorithm liked, which meant it got in front of people who liked it and stayed around. Amazon is doing that now for authors, and Audible specifically is doing that for authors on the audiobook front. That's incredibly valuable. That is life-changing, groundbreaking. Indie authors can make a living. They can have their own audiences. They can push out there and do stuff that's never been done before. Now, I'm not arguing that means that they should treat poorly. That's the fine line, right? Because 60-40 is not a good deal. I agree wholeheartedly. I don't think it's standard how to anybody else is treated on any other digital media selling platform. 100%, I back, what Brandon Sanderson's saying there completely. But I have seen a lot of people be concerned that the monopoly is bad for indie authors. And I don't think that's true, because I think that the monopoly, or it's not a real monopoly, right? That's not the right word for it, but I don't know what a better word is. The majority, having all the viewers who are looking for ebook content, who are looking to read whatever, not just published traditional authors, who are looking for good stories, going to the same place works in our benefit too. So I'm not upset that Audible has a lion's share of the audio market. I think that they have done, like Brandon said, a great job in many aspects of taking care of it. However, the problem is when you have a majority, you don't necessarily feel the pressure to change the status quo. And the status quo at the moment isn't fair. Indie publishing is growing. Obviously, all these indie authors are popping up. They're taking over. They're doing amazing stuff. They're defining new genres. And that's super freaking cool. These policies are probably in place from an era when indie publishing wasn't a big deal. They weren't really selling. That, this is something that's happened gradually over the last few years, and it's time to revisit. YouTube has gone through growing pains. Twitch has gone through growing pains. Every social media and new digital revolution of an existing industry goes through growing pains. I'm fine with that. Brandon shining a light on this is exactly what we need to have this discussion. And my hope is that Amazon and Audible will see this and realize that it is time that this gets changed and grows, because if it does, it continues to enable them to become the place where authors go to bring their content to the world, where they can be the one to shine the light. They have the audience. They can expose us to the audience. In the transaction, everybody wins. I'm cool with that. I'm 100% cool with that. We got to get there. My thought on this is I completely agree with Brandon Sanderson. I think Audible is incredible. I don't think this particular deal is good. I would love to see them revisit this deal. 50-50 or 60-40 would be an incredible change for so many indie authors out there, helping to create new jobs, helping to create a better ecosystem that continues to thrive on Audible. I hope this wasn't too confusing or too insider baseball-y. If you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll try to address some of them. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. I'm also going to link to Daniel Green's video. He did a great video on it, but he had a kind of different perspective than I, and I think his is also incredibly valid and useful. So you should go check him out. If you don't know him already, you should. Love to hear your guys' thoughts on all of this. We'll be back with more nerdy stuff soon.